Good afternoon. Today my topic is Yalta Conference. Yalta Conference was a meeting of three World War II allies: US President Franklin Roosevelt, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill, and Soviet Premier Joseph Stalin. The trio met in February 1945 in the resort city of Yalta, located along the Black Sea coast of the Crimean Peninsula. The Big Three Allied leaders discussed the post-war fate of defeated Germany and the rest of Europe, the terms of Soviet entry into the ongoing war in the Pacific against Japan, and the informational operation of the new United Nations. Next, it was Tehran Conference. Prior to the Yalta Conference, the three leaders met in November 1943 in Tehran, Iran, where they coordinated the next phase of war against the Axis powers in Europe and Pacific. At the Tehran Conference, the United States and Britain had committed to launching of invasion of northern France in the mid of 1944, opening another front of war against Nazi Germany. Stalin, meanwhile, had agreed in principle to join the war against Japan in the Pacific after Germany was defeated. By February 1945, as Roosevelt, Churchill, and Stalin gathered again at Yalta, an Allied victory in Europe was on horizon. Having liberated France and Belgium from Nazi occupation, the Allies now threatened the German border to the east. Soviet troops had driven back the Germans in Poland, Bulgaria, and Romania, and gotten within 40 miles of Berlin. This put Stalin at distinct advantage during the meeting at the Black Sea resort, a location he himself had proposed after instincting his doctors had barred him from traveling long distance. Pacific War. While the war in Europe was winding down, Roosevelt knew the United States still faced a protracted struggle against Japan in the Pacific War, and wanted to confirm Soviet support in an effort to limit the length of an sustained in the conflict. At Yalta, Stalin agreed the Soviet forces would join the Allies in the war against Japan within 2 or 3 months after Germany's surrender. In return for its support in the Pacific War, the other allies agreed the Soviet Union would gain control of Japanese territory it had lost in the Russia-Japanese War in 1904-05, including southern Sakhalin, Karafuta, and the Kuril Islands. Stalin also demanded that the United States grant diplomatic recognition of Mongolia's independence from China. The Mongolian People's Republic, founded in 1924, was a Soviet satellite. Division of Germany. At Yalta, the Big Three agreed that after Germany's unconditional surrender, it would be divided into 4 post-war occupation zones, controlled by the US, British, French, and Soviet military forces. The city of Berlin would also be divided into similar occupation zones. France leader Charles de Gaulle was not invited to the Yalta Conference, and Stalin agreed to include France in the post-war governing of Germany only if France's zone of occupation was taken from the US and British zones. The Allied leaders also determined that Germany should be completely demilitarized and that it would be assumed some responsibility for post-war reparations, but not sole responsibility. And to sum up, Stalin now promised to enter the war against Japan, but demanded territory in return from Japan's rewards, South Sakhalin and the Kuril Islands. And the United Nations, Stalin agreed that the USSR would join the UN. They would be in 5 permanent member Security Council, each with the power of veto. And in conclusion, the main outcomes were the agreement on the United Nations, Soviet agreement to join the Pacific War, and the Declaration for Liberated Europe, pledging democratic governments and free elections in all European countries. Thank you for your attention.